All right, welcome to our first video on human resources. So the first thing I like to ask is, well, how do human resources differ from other resources? Well, how are human beings different from a case of peppers or a steak, right? Well, pretty obvious, right? Steaks don't need to go to the doctor for appointments. They don't have holidays. They don't have benefits that need to be taken care of, eyeglasses, prescriptions. They aren't, steaks can be available anytime. Human beings, not so much, right? You have part-time, you have full-time. You have a lot of different factors that go into people that work for you. So the first thing we're going to look at is something called employee turnover. So what employee turnover talks about is what happens if you lose an employee, or an employee leaves your business and works for somebody else. Well, you lose that skill and knowledge that that person had, and you need to train the replacement. So it's going to cost you some money to get somebody up and trained, right? So, and interview and find these people, right? So employees have to have the right caliber of skill set. So there's math that we can do to calculate a rate, right? So the formula for that is the total of employees that worked for you over a year minus the number that are still working for you divided by the average number you had on your schedule at any time, right? So total employees that worked for you a year over the year. So if you had Bob, Frank, Jim, there was 3, right? And if only Bob's working for you, then you only have 1 employee still working for you. The average is the average number that you had on your schedule, right? If you average 2 employees in your schedule every week, no matter who they were, that's your average staff for the year. So here's an example, right? We've got a company averages 77 employees throughout the year and has 81 employees at the end of the year, and has had 198 employees work there all year. What's our turnover rate? Well, go down to our board here. So our turnover rate equals our employees that work there all year. So employees all year minus the number that are still working there divided by our average, right? So our employees that work there all year are 198 minus the ones that are still working there was 81 divided by our average of 77. So that means our turnover rate is going to be 1.52 or 152%. That seems like a lot, right? 152%. That means for every employee you hired, you turned over that employee 1.5 times. Now, is that good or is that bad? Well, that's relative to the business that you're running. If you're running a seasonal operation like a ski resort where you're going to hire more staff for your winter season and then lay your staff off when summer comes, then it's quite possible that you're going to have a 152% turnover rate. But if you have a restaurant, say in Edmonton, and your business is pretty standard all throughout the year, you probably don't want 152% employee turnover rate, right? Because there's a lot of things that go into turning over employees, right? So the costs. What are the costs? Well, there's administrative time for an exit interview and paperwork. Now, students usually ask me, what's an exit interview? Usually, when I was a chef, I would interview people that they gave me their resignation. I would have a quick interview with them. Why are you leaving? Is it something we're doing here? Is it another opportunity for you? Is it a promotion elsewhere? Because if it's something we're doing, maybe it's something we need to change. They left because we're paying $2 an hour less than anybody else. Well, okay, I want to know that information, that we're not competitive, right? They're leaving because Bob was not being nice to them, right? Well, maybe I need to deal with Bob, right? So usually when people are leaving you, they will be their most honest. So it's a good time to have an interview with them to find out why they're leaving, right? Is there anything you can do to make your business better for your employees that are still there? Vacant positions may lead to overtime for others covering. If you can't hire somebody right away to fill the spot that somebody was in, you may need to cover that with overtime, which means at least time and a half, depending on what your agreement is, if you have a union in place or not. And we'll talk about that later in another chapter, right? Insufficient staff can lead to reduced quality. If staff are working harder because they're doing more than they should be doing, because, hey, we're supposed to have 5 people working, but we only have 4 because Bob left, well, you're working harder, you're trying to get more done in less amount of time, mistakes can happen, right? So that can cost you on customers not getting the quality of food that they ordered, or refires, right? You're going to dishes that come back and have to be replaced, right? There could be costs to advertising for new employees, depending how you do it. I mean, social media these days can be a little bit cheaper. Back in the old days, we used to take ads out in newspapers. There's hiring websites that you can subscribe to, Indeed, H Careers, things like that. Those cost money, right? So every time you lose an employee, you've got to place an ad. It's going to cost you some money. It's going to be time for management spent interviewing these candidates, right? And, you don't just get, oh, this guy applied and he's hired. No, you've got to scan through all the resumes, shortlist that, and then bring in some interviews, and then shortlist that, and maybe even have a cooking test in the kitchen, right? So all this can take time away from what the manager is supposed to be doing, or adding more time there, which is a cost, right? Once you find the right person and you hire them, well, then you've got wages for training that person. You can't just put somebody in, okay, we needed a grill cook, so we're going to hire a grill cook, put them on the line, and they can just start cooking our menu. No, they know how to cook a steak, but how is it being done? What type of steaks? What's on our menu? What's the plating instructions? All that stuff, right? When I was in industry, I didn't let someone work in my kitchen by themselves for 8 days. We had what was called an 8-day training. So on day 1, you would learn these 2 items. On day 2, you would learn these 2 items. You spread it out over 8 days, and there was more chance of people retaining that information than cramming it all into one training shift, right? So I found that I had lower turnover of employees because I spent the time training them. They knew what the expectation was. They knew how to do the job. They knew where everything was, all the resources they needed. If they didn't have something, they knew who to talk to, right? The other thing is time spent processing new hire paperwork, right? When you hire somebody, you've got to do tax forms, you've got to do benefit forms, you've got to do all sorts of things, right? That take time, and time is money. I know it's a cliche, but it is, right? So how do we reduce turnover, right? Well, the first thing we want to do when we're hiring is look for someone that is going to fit well in your establishment, right? It's easy to say a line like this, look for a good fit when hiring. It's not easy. It takes time, and it takes effort and focus when you're doing the interviews, right? I know you're going to go over interviewing in another course, but just to touch on it, let the interviewee do the talking. The interviewer should ask a couple questions that's going to make the interviewer or the interviewee talk for the entire half an hour or whatever it is, right? That way you get a good idea of what that person is. Hire for attitude, train for skill, right? That's my philosophy. Obviously, conduct a proper orientation and training. Like I said, where I was, last I was chef, it was 8 days. We had orientation on the first day, and then it was 7 more days of training. Okay, this is where your locker is. This is where you get changed. This is where your break room is. This, like, not just how to cook the stuff on the menu, it's how do you work in our establishment? How do you become part of the team, right? Motivate and empower employees to help them feel valuable, right? Trust your employees once they know what they need to do and how to do it, that they're going to be able to do it, right? I, as the executive chef, knew how to cook eggs, right? So technically I could cook breakfast. My breakfast cook was far better than me at doing it because he did it every day for 8 hours a day, right? So I trusted him that if he was in the weeds and I needed to help him, it was me subservient to the breakfast cook. What do you need? How do I help you? I'm not going to come in and say, hey, let me take over and you help me just because I'm the chef. No, you got to empower your employees and trust they know how to do their job because they're doing it far more than you are, right? Now, the next one's really kind of crass to say, terminate bad fits quickly, but it's true. If someone isn't working out, generally when you hire somebody, they have a probationary period, right? And it depends on where you're working with. It could be a month, it could be 3 months, right? I used to put it in my calendar when that probationary period was up for a new hire employee, and I would backdate about a week to go, okay, this is my final. Is this person going to work or are they not going to work? Because if they're not working, they're not going to help the team, and the team's going to feel that I haven't done them a favor by getting a good quality person in there, right? And it's not fair to the new hire that you've hired in place that if it's not working out for them, they need to move on, find a position at another place that's going to fit better with their style, right? It doesn't do anyone favors, that employee or the business, by having somebody that just doesn't gel and doesn't fit with the team, right? Okay, so that's the video on, or the lesson on employee turnover, and we'll move on to the next one.